Let's talk about Streets of New Capenna, Best of the Worst. That's the top 3 cards from that set that are seeing play in 1% or less of decks since that set's release. Coming in at number 3, we have Maestro's Ascendancy. For blue, black, red, we get an enchantment. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard by sacrificing a creature in addition to paying its other costs. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Maestro's Ascendancy is a 3-color card, and it's for a specific strategy, instant and sorcery spells. However, what I found is the Grixis strategy for instant and sorcery spells sort of tends to be littered with these cards that create tokens whenever you cast a spell. So if you're playing one of those decks that has a bunch of creatures that make tokens whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, then you'll have plenty of things sitting around for you to sacrifice that will let you cast more sorceries or instants and get more tokens out. So this fits excellently in that strategy if that's what you've got going on. Coming in at number 2, we have Cemetery Tampering. For 2 and a black, we get an enchantment with Hideaway 5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards. Then, if there are 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Cemetery Tampering does require a very specific strategy. You do need to really care about self-mill before you put this in your deck. So what I think is holding people up is they're thinking, well, I play this and it only mills me 3 a turn and I need 20 in my graveyard before it matters. But I don't think that's the correct way to think about this card. What you want to be doing is only playing this in a deck that wants to be self-milling anyway. So you're going to have other cards in your deck that are self-milling you as well on top of this. So you're going to get to the Hideaway eventually anyway. But even if you don't, 3 mana for an enchantment that mills you 3 every turn, even if you never get to the Hideaway, I think that's valuable enough in the style of deck that really cares about that. Best of the Worst is Duskmangler. For 5 and 2 black, we get a 5/4 creature horror. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life. When Duskmangler enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature, discards a card, and loses 4 life. Duskmangler does cost 7 mana with an additional cost, so that's pretty steep, and I think why people are shying away from this. However, where I think this is going to be really valuable is going to be in 2 style of strategies. The first is going to be the graveyard recursion strategy, where you're just throwing this in your graveyard, you're paying 1 mana to cast Reanimate and bring it out, and at that point, you're dodging all of this additional cost and the 7 mana, so it becomes a lot more valuable getting the Enter the Battlefield trigger. The other thing I think this is going to be good in is going to be Enter the Battlefield or Blink style decks, because even if you have to pay the additional cost up front, keep in mind you're only paying that one time when you cast it, and you only have to pay 1 of them. Paying 4 life one time to cast this thing isn't that big of a deal when you're making all of your opponents do all 3 of the things that they don't want to do. Sacrifice a creature, pay the life, and discard a card. This card is very underutilized in those strategies, and I think if you try it out, you're gonna like it. That's it for Streets of New Capenna, Best of the Worst. All 3 of these cards are pretty specific in the strategies that they want to go in, but I do think that they're all powerful and underutilized. Let me know what you guys think.